go live. Okay,
Not a
preparing a
bad-
you're
live
good.
bad idea,
stream.
though.
Got it.
Okay.
You're good.
Rob,
now.
not a bad idea though.
Hmm.
We good?
Mhm.
You're good.
All right. Let's start. Let me get my clock here.
Yep.
7:39. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Zoning Commission of the City of Danbury on February 28th, 2023. Let the record show we'll begin with a roll call at 7:39. Commissioner Coelho,
Here.
Commissioner David is absent. Commissioner Fay,
Here.
Commissioner Hawley,
Here.
Commissioner Helinski,
Here.
Commissioner Jowdy,
Here.
Commissioner Malillo,
Here.
Commissioner Rea is absent. Delayed flight is plane is delayed. Commissioner Bennett, alternate is absent. Commissioner Duran, alternate is absent. Commissioner Mahia, alternate is absent. And I am Commissioner Haddad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that what everybody gets? 1,
Yep.
2,
Yep.
3. Beautiful. We got 7. The next regular meeting is scheduled for March 14th, 2023. If everyone would stand, if they have flags, hold them for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Commission members, let me read in the Zoom instructions first. The meeting of the Danbury Zoning Commission is being held on Zoom as a virtual meeting. Even though this meeting is a virtual meeting, members of the public and interested parties continue to have the opportunity to participate in the meeting in a couple of different ways. You can participate via Zoom and see the audio and video, or you can call in by phone and participate via audio only. Please be aware that we may have to mute your microphone or telephone to avoid an echo or some other background noise. This is also being streamed live via YouTube. Instructions on how to participate in the meeting appear on the City of Danbury website, and all of the documents and materials that apply to the matters to be discussed during this meeting, including the agenda, are also available on the City of Danbury website. As always, if you have any questions, please contact the City of Danbury Planning and Zoning Department. As a reminder, the entire meeting will be posted on and can be seen on the City of Danbury website. We will follow the posted agenda as per standard practice. Prior to the meeting, any questions or comments on agenda items were submitted via email to Sharon Calitro. Those comments will be read during the appropriate portion of the meeting. Finally, please remember that technology glitches sometimes do occur. Please be patient if that happens. Commission members, everyone received the February 6th minutes, and they are public record. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to accept the minutes of February 6th? Motion to accept the minutes of February 6th. Motion made by Commissioner Jowdy. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Coelho. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Not hearing or seeing any opposition, minutes are accepted unanimously. Public hearing this evening, I was going to say the first public hearing, but the only public hearing this evening is petition of 3775 LLC as applicant. 1-3 an unnumbered lot, Pembroke Road, G08029, owned by Robert Morrissey, G08030 and G08098, owned by 3775 LLC, for change of zone from RA40 to RA20. Commission members received the copy of the petition, the map, as well as the public. I'm going to read the Planning Commission recommendation dated February 6, 2023 to Theodore J. Haddad, Jr., Chairman, Danbury Zoning Commission, Arnold E. Finaldi, Chairman, Danbury Planning Commission, regarding 8-3A referral petition 3775 LLC, as I just read in as the first on a public hearing this evening. At the web-based Zoom meeting held on February 1st, 2023, the City of Danbury Planning Commission voted to give the above referenced petition a positive recommendation for the following reasons. Number one, changing the zone to allow development at this density appears to provide an opportunity to develop smaller homes on smaller lots to address the housing supply needs in the Danbury market. Number 2, this complies with the Plan of Conservation Development because the 2023 POCD Future Land Use Map, FLUM, identifies this area as neighborhood residential. Number 3, this proposal generally complies with the zone change criteria in section I0, I3 of the zoning regulations as described in the Planning Department staff report dated 1/26/23. That's 10.I.3. The motion to give this positive recommendation was made by Mr. Sylvain, seconded by Mrs. Hofstadter, and passed unanimously by voice vote with 5 ayes. Mr. Chocho, Mrs. Hofstadter, Mr. Sylvain, Mr. Haas, and Chairman Finaldi. At this time, I'd like to call upon Ms. Calitro if she would go over her staff report to the commission, which everyone does have a copy of as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
For the record, Sharon Calitro, I'm the planning director. You all have a copy of my January 26th staff report. Again, we received a petition from 3375 LLC to rezone 3 parcels on Pembroke Road from RA40 to RA20. 3375 LLC owns 2 of the lots, G08030 and G08098, and Mr. Robert Morrissey owns one lot, G08029, and he does consent to this petition and being represented by Attorney Marcus. The previous petition, there was a previous petition for these same properties for rezoning from RA40 to RMF10, which was withdrawn. And as the a legal counsel for the petitioner indicated amongst his reasons, although he said that it was the petition was withdrawn because it was rejected by the commission, that is actually factually incorrect. In fact, the applicant withdrew the petition on August 18th of last year after the Planning Commission issued a negative recommendation and after the close of the public hearing by the Zoning Commission, but before the Zoning Commission took any action on the petition. So just clarifying that for the record. The subject parcels comprise 5.149 acres. The area requested to be rezoned per the petition is 5.39 acres, and the difference is the area of the right-of-way of Pembroke Road. Again, the zoning line is in the center of the road. There are 2 parcels immediately north of the subject parcels on Pembroke Road that are RA40, and slightly east north is land zone RA20, which for identification purposes is the land of the Amber Room. Lands to the south are RA40, as is property immediately west, which is the Q Restaurant, and then Stetson Place, which is a little bit north, and to the west is zone RMF10. And I gave you a copy of a map. So tax assessor lot G08030 is 1.012 acres in size, contains an existing structure noted on the tax assessor cards as retail and office space. Tax assessor lot G08098 is 0.535 acres in size, is vacant, and it is undersized in the RA40 district. Again, RA40, 40,000 square feet. Tax assessor G08029, which is the parcel owned by Mr. Morrissey, is 3.602 acres in size and was the former location of Willcroft Kennels. Again, based on the zone change map that was presented, there are areas of steep grades across the property. Rezoning would allow, obviously, any change in use to any of the uses allowed in the RA20 district. And for purposes of just residential comparison, based on numerical calculation, you take the full amount of the land, you divide it by the zoning district, and you come up with 11 dwelling units compared to 5 that would be allowed under the existing RA40 zone. However, fewer units would likely be accommodated if a cluster development is proposed, and then grading and other improvements could further reduce that 11 dwelling unit number. Rezoning as proposed would extend the RA20 district south, but would leave those 2 properties immediately north of the subject site in the RA40 zone. And while this is a little bit odd, obviously, to do that, both of those lots are actually undersized in the RA40 zoning district. So those 2 lots are non-conforming. in size. And then one of them contains a non-conforming commercial use in an RA40 zone. So it's a little bit odd to leave them there, but they don't even match the zone that they're in. In terms of the Plan of Conservation and Development, the 2023 plan, the future land use map, which is what we call the FLUM, designates the subject parcels as appropriate for neighborhood residential. And in this category, these areas are comprised mostly of single-family homes on small to medium-sized lots and may include small clusters of attached housing. They are typically located within water and sewer service areas and may have a range of transportation options, including sidewalks and access to transit and service. Previous regulatory maps for these sites indicated there are wetlands on the site, and the rezoning map submitted with the petition shows a grade differential, which I mentioned before, and those things would have to be addressed prior to any development at any density, whether it be RA20 or RA40. Other limited uses are also allowed in the single family RA20 zone, just like the RA40 zone, although the petitioner has indicated its desire to construct single family dwellings on lots other than 1 acre in size. So I provided for you a synopsis of 10I3, which is the zone change criteria. Rezoning would result in a loss, obviously, of 5.14 acres of single family zoned land in the RA40 zone, but it would stay, obviously, single family, would just move to the RA20 zone. And that does allow some development at a density that appears to provide an opportunity for smaller homes on smaller lots with a commensurate, we would presume, sales price, and that may help address some of the housing needs in the Danbury market. Again, this type of development in this area was considered when the FLUM was prepared as part of the POCD process, and that's why it was identified the area as neighborhood residential. The specific criteria, A through E, I won't read them all, but basically the zone to the north is RA20, to the south is RA40, and this would extend the RA20 zoning district. So it would be an extension of an existing districts. It is located on Pembroke Road at the curvature of the road. It's a state roadway, and improvements may require, whether it's single family RA40 or single family RA20, some improvements to the wherever the driveway intersects the state road. In terms, the site is served by public water and sewer on Pembroke Road. As I indicated in D, there are some slopes, and those will have to be addressed when the layout is proposed, and that would be whether or not it was an RA40 or RA20. And the same goes for E, which is any potential impacts to wetlands would have to be considered when the site is developed and the land is not in a public water supply watershed. So in conclusion, rezoning to the RA20 would extend an existing district and is consistent with the recently adopted 2023 POCD. And while it would leave those two properties remaining in the RA40, they are both non-conforming in size for the RA40, and one is indeed non-conforming in use. So they're probably better suited to the RA20 than the RA40 as well. So for those reasons, and since the rezoning complies with the general and specific criteria, staff has no objection to this request. Anybody has
Okay.
any questions? Yeah, Mr.
Commission
Chairman.
members, any questions of Ms. Calitro at this time? No, I don't see any hands or I don't hear anything. I'll now ask anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
I see Attorney Neil Marcus with his hand raised. Absolutely.
I'm here on behalf of the applicant. For the record, Neil Marcus, Code Wolf PC at 158 Deer Hill Avenue, and I'll be joined this evening by Ben Dodo, our professional engineer. He'll add some background to why this proposal we believe is appropriate, and why we think it addresses some of the concerns that were raised in the August 2022 hearing when the same properties were presented to the commission for a change to RMF 10, which of course is across the street from the property at Stetson Place, and we wanted to join up with a zone that was consistent in the area. But we heard the comments made by the Planning Commission. And by the way, Sharon is correct. My application has a typo when I said a prior application to rezone for higher density residential use was rejected by the commission. That's actually rejected by the Planning Commission. And then subsequently, it was withdrawn before zoning after the August hearing. So the word planning was left off. But there's been a terrific reversal, obviously, by the Planning Commission in its current opinion of the zone change, which is now for the RA20. The prior application met with a lot of neighborhood resistance as well, and some of the issues dealt with the sightlines and the use of Pembroke Road, which has its own issues. Whether this property is developed RA40 or RA20, it's got the same issues. But there are some benefits in the RA20 zone that don't exist in the RA40, and I'm going to call on Ben Dota to comment on those in a minute. But going without repeating the staff report, a lot of things have changed and since August, and one of them is that the Plan of Conservation and Development was adopted in December, and that changes the view, because one of my comments to the commission back in August was that Pembroke Road is, in my mind, somewhat of a zoning mishmash. And it still is. I mean, as Sharon Gleater's report indicates, we still have two properties to the north in the RA40 zone. We reached out to those property owners unsuccessfully. We just couldn't get them to respond, because we were willing to incorporate their properties in this application, but we couldn't do it without their support, and we didn't have contact with them. But as she indicates in her report, the properties up there really are so non-conforming that whether our properties RA20 or RA40 doesn't affect them. And the subject property is non-conforming because it's basically been used for mixed residential and commercial uses over the years, as has a lot of Pembroke Road itself. So the Plan of Conservation Development goes a long way in identifying what the issues are that need to be addressed. And what we're doing here is addressing one of those issues. So having said that, I'm going to ask if Ben Dota will chime in and explain the positive benefits to RA20 that don't exist in the RA40 zoning. Take it, Ben.
Mr. Dodo, please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Chairman, members of the Zoning Commission, Benjamin Dodo, licensed professional engineer in office at 248 Main Street, representing the applicant. As Neil said, this was before you last year. I wasn't part of that application. However, I did watch it. So I did, pay attention, listen to a lot of the comments and concerns that were raised. And so once I was retained to work on this, I wanted to see what could be done under either an R20 or a similar single family residential zone. And I'm going to share my screen in a minute, but before I do, the first thing I did is I looked at what could be done under the existing RA40 zone, 1 acre zoning. That zone allows single family lots, but it doesn't allow flag lots because it's an arterial or collector road. I see Sharon nodding, so my memory serves me correctly. So you can't put the rear lots way in the back, but you can have lots that have a minimum of 50 feet of frontage. So I did just a quick subdivision map of what could be done. I'm going to share my screen right now. Can everyone see this? I hope.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, we have it.
Okay, great.
Now,
So this is basically the parcel, and under an RA40 scenario, you could get 4 lots. They'd be, straight, some of them normal shape, others semi-flag lots, but they're technically lots that have the minimum width, so they're not access way driven. And it would work. It could be done. You'd have to go through, the proper approval process with it. But what it had on there that I wasn't crazy about was it had 4 driveways. It would have 4 driveways. Here, 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 and then somewhere here in the middle, serving these lots. And we all know the discussions of the curve. Those of us are familiar with the curve. It can act as a blind spot to others. So looked at the regs. You can't do a cluster subdivision in the RA40 for for land with this acreage, but you can do it in the RA20. So that was the next thing I looked at. And I don't want to repeat the zoning regs, but what a cluster does, it gives a lot more flexibility as far as reducing the amount of driveways, increasing the density of the homes, making them closer to each other, and at the same token, creating open space. And as Sharon had said, technically, if you divide 5 acres by 20,000 square, or 5.1 acres by 20,000 square feet, you get 10 or 11. But in reality, with the cluster, when you do a cluster subdivision, and I'm going to show that right now. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
What a cluster allows you to do is put all the single family houses on one lot, have one shared driveway that'll really function like a private road. And it allows me to take the driveway and shift it as far north as we can. So there'll be one point of ingress and egress. This I'm showing is a 24-foot wide driveway. It's like any driveway or small town road that you have. And I have 9, not 10 or 11, because the way the cluster regulations work, you immediately have to take 15% off of the density, and then you divide by that number. So what it basically does is it confines the development of the houses toward the front. And again, this is just conceptual. We're not here to approve this. This is just what could be done. And then the rest of the lot can be used for open space, whether it's just, woods or undisturbed or lawn, or I'm showing you could potentially put some shared recreation area here, swimming pools, a court, just for use by the residents. So instead of having a typical subdivision that has 5 swimming pools and 10 lots, you have one shared one, and you have some ability for visitors to park. They can park in the driveways as well. But one of the other things this plan would do, or a cluster would do, I'm showing it allows us to take this area here. Well, actually, it's right here. Sorry about that. And lower the grade. Remove trees, retaining walls, things like that are in the way, and sort of create a line of sight not just for the residents of this development, but also for everyone traveling up and down Route 37. It'll sort of open it up, and in my opinion, it alleviates a lot of the issues that the commission members raised and even some of the neighbors raised with this. And then again, single family houses, the amount of traffic with this many single family houses compared to what you could potentially have there for pre-existing retail or personal services is a fraction of what it would be. So again, this is what could be done. And I felt that this was the best and most appropriate use for this site, given the zone, given a proposed zone change. Be happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let me ask you, do you have any idea how low you can cut that grade and how far deep it's going to come in off the curb?
Oh, that grade, yes. Just for example, you at the north and south end, I would think we'd want to come about 20 feet in. And in the middle, this is a little more than 50. So it would really slice through that. And as far as the grade, it would probably just end up being, 1 to 3 or 4 feet above the gutter line there of the road. Typically with a sight line, you want to, your eye level is usually at about 3.5 feet above ground in a car. So you want to be able to be below that you can see off it. But it would be, a lot of that front would be taken down, especially in front of the kennel where the topography is really steep and there's some terrace walls in that area.
What is that green rectangle at the bottom?
Oh, it's just an area that you could potentially put a detention basin or stormwater management pond.
Oh, okay.
Again, nothing's designed. It's just, the site will be served by city water, city sewer. It's a logical place to put it. It's in the open space, and it's at the lower portion of the site from a topography standpoint.
I think there might be a city gas line out there too, isn't there?
I don't know, Ted. I can check.
No, I don't think it matters to us.
Well, it does matter if we, if we end up coming through and getting the zone change and coming through with plans to go in front of the planning commission.
Yeah, that's us though. Well, whatever. And I can't see any hands because of the shared screen, but
I'll turn that off.
Okay. And I see
Again-
Mr. Jotty may have his hand raised too.
Yeah,
Mr. Jotty, why don't you go ahead?
okay, Ben,
Sure.
this is in the RA 40 zone right now.
Yes.
Okay, and then you went and the last public hearing, the applicant wanted to do it in the RMF 10 zone,
Yes.
correct? Okay. So let's dissect everything just to see what we have and what we could have had and so forth. If they developed in the existing RA 40, how many houses would they have in that one? About
You could get 4.
4. Okay, so they went from 4 in the first application to the RMF 10, which could have gotten what? I don't
22.
remember.
22.
22?
Yes.
22, okay. So then we went from the RA 40 to the 20, and we're getting 11. Okay, so we're at 4 if we did nothing, to 22 if we went to the RMF 10, and then now 11 in the RA 20.
9.
9, that's right, 9. Okay.
Yeah, because it'd be a cluster, and a cluster
Right.
takes 15% off.
Right. So am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good. Thanks.
Thank you. Commission members, any other commission members at this time of, go ahead, Commissioner Melillo, I see your hand.
Yeah, Ben, just for clarification, I know you're talking about the cluster development as an option. The
Yes.
cluster development isn't the only option, correct? They could do a non-cluster development on this as well.
Yes, you could do single family houses. I didn't do that option, Rob. I started thinking about it, and I quickly was discouraged because by the time you start cutting the lots, remember the 4-lot one I showed you? You'd probably have 6 out front. And again, I didn't lay it out, but flag lots are not allowed in this zone anyway. So you'd end up having to put a town road in to get lots in the back. So this really lent itself to a cluster more than anything. But you're correct. You could do a traditional subdivision. I don't have that number. I don't know if it'll be 11 or 10 or 8 or 9, but it'll be somewhere in that range. I just didn't like it. I didn't even look at it.
Okay.
The cluster made so much more sense. And then additionally, this driveway is a private driveway. It's not something the city of Danbury is going to have to maintain over time.
Right, would they be able to put a private road in and do something similar? Or instead of a public road?
With a traditional, no.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah,
Because you need the frontage, yes.
Okay, the only reason I asked is because I wanted to just for comparison purposes, just to be able to determine under the proposed change what the maximum development potential would be. So obviously the cluster would yield itself to maximum of 9. A non-cluster development roughly would be somewhere between 9 and 11, you would say?
Yes, theoretically. But as you know, Sharon mentioned in her letter, once you start actually laying it out, and as you know, this lot is not a perfect square or rectangle, it'd probably be somewhere in there, Rob. I don't have that answer. I know it's not more than 11.
That's okay. You answered. I just wanted so we could keep that in mind. That's all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commission members, any other questions at this time of Mr. Dodo or of Attorney Marcus? Commission members. Attorney Marcus, back to you before I go to anyone else wishing to speak in favor. Do you have anything else right now?
I just want to, a little quick summary in that, that you got the staff report, and then you've got Ben's concept plans that basically align with what the staff report sort of envisions for this property given its location, its topography, its limitations. And the reason that the cluster is clearly the way to go is mostly because the cluster allows significant improvements to Pembroke Road without really touching Pembroke Road. I mean, you don't have to go get permission from the state of Connecticut to work on the road. We can improve their road on our property, as Ben has indicated, without much effort. And we can only do that if we can limit the curb cuts. And the whole idea that message came loud and clear last August. It came from some of the commission members, comments, but it really came from the public comments, the people who live out there. And at this point, if we can do the RA20 cluster, we can not only address their comments, we can actually make their life a lot easier, because I understand the difficulties that they have coming on and off of Pembroke Road in its current condition. I'm not sure, quite honestly, who's going to fix that. I mean, I'm not sure when the state's going to spend more money on Pembroke Road to really address it. This plan will address it. And to me, we didn't encourage Ben to do RA20 conventional subdivisions, because in reality, we have no interest in that, because it doesn't really, result in any positive plan at all. So we'd like you to consider, as you deliberate on this, the way this has come to you. And if I have to watch the Planning Commission video of their meeting when they did their recommendation, and Perry Sylvain, really, his comments were actually uplifting, because he actually said that it is a pleasure to see an applicant actually listen to the criticism and not take a defensive position, but go out and fix the proposal to comport with to address the criticism that was laid. He actually was very complimentary, and I thought that that kind of sums up where we want to be. We want to get out of this proposal tonight with a zone change that recognizes that we are addressing a better use of this property than was proposed originally in the RMF zone, but that exists in the current zone. That right now, if we have to put in single families on 1 acres, we can do it in a way that meets the regulations, but it just is a lousy result for the city of Danbury and the neighborhood. And I do think, again, I have to share Sharon's thoughts on the need for smaller housing. We need it desperately in the area, and this is a small step in the right direction. We're talking 9 units. But it's at least in the right direction. So unless you have any further questions, we'll rest at this point and we'll answer any questions that the public has as well. Thank you.
I think Commissioner Malillo has another one for you, Attorney Marcus.
It
I got
wouldn't
my
be a-
obligatory.
it wouldn't be
I
a
was gonna
zoning
say,
change if we didn't.
Hold on 1 second, please. There's a box with the name Sachi, S-A-T-C-H-I. Please mute your mic. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Commissioner Malillo.
I was gonna say, I have my obligatory question for Attorney Marcus, as he alluded to. I have to ask him a question. So I'm gonna preface this question just by a point of information, factual information, Attorney Marcus, which we all know Danbury is one of the very unique communities in the state of Connecticut that is continuing to see an increase in population, while all the other, most of the communities are shrinking. And consequently, while that's a good thing, it's nice to be a city that's growing, while others aren't. That is having a negative impact on the educational system to a degree, and recognizing there are some schools in Danbury that have room, currently to incorporate that growth, and then there's others that are bursting at their seams. We're already over capacity. Do you happen to know, just as we're talking about, and because there's no guarantee it's going to be school-age children, not school-age children, but just so I can consider, do you happen to know if Pembroke is one of those schools that has room to grow, or if they've already met their, or if it's one of the schools that's bursting at the seams?
That question, Bob, I got to confess, I don't have the answer on. I haven't heard of serious overcrowding there as I have in some of the other schools in the system. But the development, of course, the major development has been on the west side in the school systems up here in the north end of town. There hasn't been as much development there in the last 20 years. There has been some, but not any huge projects that would attract families with school-age children. There's been some condominiums, of course, along Pembroke Road over the years, but all those are actually kind of getting old too at this point. So I'm not sure that Pembroke has been identified, but I can't answer it definitively.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, my
Thank you.
children went to Pembroke, and as a teacher, I don't feel like I've heard of them, but I know that there's, they have other services. So I just wasn't sure if you happen to know that.
And by the way,
Thank
just as a point, Bob, because you brought up the other night, I was at a meeting in the Bethel Planning and Zoning Commission, and one of the members of the public was talking about the impact on the schools. And interestingly enough, that one of the zoning commission members said when she moved to Bethel sometime in the 1970s, there were actually more school-age children in the Bethel school system in the 70s than there are today, by 100 or so. But it's interesting. As you know, the demographics go up, the demographics go down, and it is to say, having an overcrowded school system, I hate to say, is a real positive thing. But in reality, as you pointed out originally in your comments, Danbury is unique in the fact that we are still a growing community, says something good about how the city is run. And maybe some of you could actually take credit for that. But we have to suffer with the fruits of our own success.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see Commissioner Coelho's hand is up. Commissioner Coelho.
Just a quick question, maybe for Attorney Marcus or maybe Ben. What are the approximate sizes of the houses based on that 9 cluster unit that's proposed or could be a possibility?
Take it, Ben.
So Mike, I've got them on this plan. They're 30 by 50, so that's a 1,500 square foot footprint. So times 2 stories, less a garage, less a utility room. So somewhere under 3,000 square feet with a deck. And again, that I drew boxes on here, Mike.
Yeah, I got you.
But that's the size. These aren't massive houses.
And the other question I had was, seems like a much safer layout with one driveway, as you said, as opposed to potentially, say, 4 separate ones around that corner.
Yeah, that was that's the benefit of the cluster that you can do that you can't do with a traditional subdivision. And we're getting rid of those 2 driveways that are there now, one being a terrible one at the kennel and the other one being a continuous curb cut for the other building.
I drive it almost every day because I live in that neighborhood and I know what it's like when the cars coming out of the queue, which that always poses a problem because there's a couple entrances and exits. And I think what you propose is much safer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commission members, any other questions at this time of Attorney Marcus or Mr. Dodo? Commission members.
You know, there's nobody in the driver's seat, right? I mean, you understand that we're not in England. Just so you...
Mr. Coelho. Okay, your mic is off. Is
I'm
there
sorry.
anyone?
Sorry for that, guys.
That's all right. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anyone who, I see Mr. Gucker's hand. I'll ask again, you can go in a second. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go with Mr. Gucker first. We're gonna go with Deborah Kennedy next. And if anybody else, I'll keep calling. Mr. Gucker, go ahead.
So good evening, all. I guess if one
evening.
thing that we've learned in the legislature is how to navigate Zoom and how to do the raised hand functions and all those other things instead of dancing around and waving, you know, like we have issues. I come out in opposition for much of the same reasons why I did last time, but also, you know, I will say this, I do see Ben's plan as being very ambitious, and I do understand that it is just a concept of what he's looking to do here. The concerns that we had last time, yes, the traffic was a major concern. 2, the amount of disruption in soil and blasting that would be needed to be done in this area was a big concern. 3 sight lines, which I understand some of that is being addressed, is a big concern. But again, what we're dealing with here is we are changing to an RA20 zone and using the idea that there's surrounding areas that are RA20 and we need to be more conforming. But we need to look at why and how those areas became what they are. You know, Stetson Place itself, you know, this body and the city of Danbury had no control over that. You know, that came in under the Affordable Housing Clause, which basically took any decisions out of your hands. So we wound up at RMF 10. Back when that property was available to be developed back in the BRT days of the 80s and the middle 80s, it was turned down many, many times due to, you know, traffic issues on that road, etc. What they found with that project as they started, because the project with Stetson Place was scheduled to be much larger than it is now, much larger than and I think, Mr. Chairman, you understand this, there was a lot of issues with rock and blasting and other environmental issues in there that would not be known until you actually get in there with a shovel and a pick and an excavator to realize we really can't build as large as we could because of just the nature of what's in that area, which is a lot of lot of stone, a lot of bedrock. The area behind with the Amber Room, that's, in fact, they're going in front of planning, I believe, next week to extend their permitting for another 5 years because their permitting is expiring. They were approved for a cluster development. That area was enlarged for development. Many of these changes from single family 1 acre zones were done by developers, not by individuals that said, you know what, my lot is not conforming. I can't build my house here. I want to change the zone. They were developers that came in to build their projects, to maximize their profits and move on. This piece of property, and I'm sure many of you have been out there. I know Commissioner Coelho drives by there all the time, as do I. It goes straight up. To look at the ambitious plan, there is going to be massive amounts of blasting and earth moving that is going to be required. I like the idea of cutting off the corner, but now the only way I can see that happening is you're going to be putting in massive retaining walls to hold that back. Because right now, the driveway, even to get into that area to go up to that kennel, you're probably raising 15, 20 feet off the surface of the road just to get up to the front door of that building. So to be able to cut all that out will be very, very ambitious. They can do a regular development. You don't need 4 driveways. In fact, I don't even know how you would get the sight lines in there to even navigate out of there safely. As somebody who comes up Padenham Road all the time to that intersection, many times I won't even go out that way to get out of Padenham because you cannot get onto that road. You cannot turn onto that road. Many times, if I have to take a left to go out of the end of Padenham Road to go up Pembroke, I will drive out Capitola and come out on Barnum Road because at least I have some sight lines and at least I have a chance of making that turn. I don't feel that, as much as, this is an ambitious project, I don't see that really happening. I mean, as somebody who used to deal with designs and such back in the day, back in my old days, it looks great on paper, but when you actually get a shovel in the ground, it does change. So I am concerned, and I am also speaking on a number of the neighbors who were not able to make it tonight, who have asked me, to come out and say something. The amount of blasting that's going to be required to do this, it doesn't work. Changing RA 20 to be more conforming, it's surrounded in a sea of RA 40. I have always said this in front of this commission, and I always will continue to say this. If you buy a piece of property, buy the property knowing what you can do with it, what you can do with it in its present state, and accept that. But to purchase a piece of property, or even to buy on a sale upon contingency of approval, hoping that you will be able to change things to your benefit. We've seen this all up and down Padenham Road. We saw this next to the body shop, which used to be Bill's, which then became Colonial, and it became something else. There was a house there. There was a discussion many years ago about turning that whole area into RMF10. That was denied. Traffic, access to the road. This road back, I forget what the traffic numbers were now, probably 20 years ago, was 19,000 trips a day. I don't know what it is now, because it's obviously more. Because what we also have to understand is this is a major arterial road tying into the town of New Fairfield and, of course, everything north of New Fairfield. And as these communities grow, those areas get far more crowded. I had to deal with the whole Stacy Road interchange problem. I inherited that problem when I was a state rep. The amount of work that went into even correcting problems as they got into the ground, and that project ballooned because of the unknown factors that they came across. There's going to be more issues dealing with the state, I believe, on this. I think there's going to be, even with cutting and making, that corner much more visible for coming in and out of those driveways. It's going to be extremely, extremely challenged. And I don't feel that, having the neighbors where they, purchase their houses, knowing what they would have next to them or what could be built next to them, watching continually around them, developers come in and purchase properties, and I had a feeling, without knowing, because if you looked at the file before tonight, there was none of these plans are in the file. None of the ideas. I assumed that we would be looking at a cluster development. It's the only way to maximize profit. Single family houses would not be profitable, especially for the amount of earth moving that would need to be done. There are alternatives, but again, as was aptly asked by one of the other commission members, what else could be built there? We don't know, because all we're asking here, or what is being asked, is to change the zone to RA20. And assuming it would be cluster, I think the disruption, of this land to be able to build in there is just, it really needs to be considered. And unfortunately, I'm not even sure if you can take this into effect with changing the zone to RA20 of what can be built. But I just don't think it fits the neighborhood. I don't think adding more, especially on this dangerous corner that at least once a month, there is a serious car accident on that corner. I don't see this being a benefit. I see this more of being a problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gucker. Commission members, any questions of Mr. Gucker at this time? Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Gucker. I see the hand of Deborah Kennedy.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
So I live at 71A Padenham Road, which is just one lot away from the dog kennel. So I travel this road all the time. I have a terrible driveway. I think we talked about this the last meeting. You're basically taking your life in your hands coming in and out of my driveway. In regards to the comment that we are a mismatch zoning area, I mean, most of the houses here are RA40, 1 acre to 2 acre lots. And we have, obviously some condo mom and pop shops in the area also. I'm a local small business owner myself, and I love supporting these small businesses. Jeffrey's Complex, for instance, anytime I can go there, I'll go there. But let me tell you, it is the worst parking lot to come in and out of. And it is not even the lots you're talking about are even on a worse bend curve of that road. Jeffrey's is hard to get out. My driveway is hard to get out. And that bend that you're talking about is probably the worst bend of the whole road. Mr. Dodo's concept planned, move everything back, the grade of the land there is still not going to improve the road. The state's not going to come in, like you all were saying. They're not going to change the road on Pembroke Road. That curve is going to be there, whether the trees are pushed back or not. It's not going to matter. The dog kennel there, their driveway, yes, impossible to get in and out of. I'll agree. Even if that's pushed back, is not going to change the road, is what I'm saying. People go very fast on this road. It is a very dangerous road. Now, we bought our house as long-term investment here, and our neighborhood is our neighborhood. We have our houses. We're not on top of each other. We're not overlooking anybody. We're kind of set back. We're one of the upper lot homes. And I just feel like, we bought this house for the neighborhood. The fact that we didn't have a lot of people on top of us. The traffic, now we're not happy with. There's a lot of traffic on this road, a lot of people coming in and out of New Fairfield into Danbury. They go very fast. It's not a safe road. And I just feel like putting more houses next to us, whether it's 4 driveways or 1 driveway, is a very dangerous curve of the road. I don't think it's going to benefit anybody but the wallets of the contractors, honestly. What else did I want to say? the roughness of the land. Okay, now that property abuts our property. And I know I hike it, I'll walk it. We take our quads out on our property. You can see it. It is not flat like your map shows. It is by no means flat land. There will be a lot of blasting. And if you remember back when they did Stetson Place condos, they opposed a certain amount of condos. Well, they didn't get as many as they had hoped to. They stopped because of the rock, the ledge, the blasting that they had to do. I do know of some neighbors who got damage from the blasting. Our garage itself got a crack in our foundation from the blasting from Stetson's. We're not that far away. The amount of blasting that they have to do is not, 80 feet of ledge. We're talking 80 feet of ledge they're going to have to blast. Now, you tell me that that's not going to affect all of us who've lived here for 20, 30 years and our homes that we we invested in our homes. And that's a major, major concern for us, is the blasting that they'll have to do. You guys can walk the land and see for yourselves. Some of it is 80 feet of ledge. My backyard, I've had archaeologists walking through my backyard. I go out, the dogs are barking. I said, well, what are you doing on my property? The guy says, I've never seen this size of this rock. He says, I just would like to take pictures of it. I mean, they're huge. And well, I don't know. I think between the blasting, the traffic, that curve coming in and out, and anybody knows who's gone to either Jeffrey's Chinese, Jeffrey's liquor store, the hairdressers, anything, that is really very, very hard bend to get in and out of. If you guys don't mind, I have my husband here with me also together. He has a few things he would like to say, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Let him just identify himself and then he could take over the mic.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sean Kennedy. My former profession, I was a pipeline welder. We did pipelines. We blasted through mountains. We blasted through just about everything you can imagine. The topography of this, sir, is not for a cluster home. And the reason why I say this, and Mr. Marcus and Mr. Dodo might be able to have some more answers for me, but when you build a single family home on a 1 acre lot, what they do is they go in with a drilling machine, they drill a hole in the rock, they put an expanding compound in. It's a little slower. The expanding compound basically breaks the rock up and the machines come in and take it out. When you're talking about doing demolition on a project this size, you're going to use dynamite. You're going to have to blast. You're going to change the water table. You're going to change the aquifer. You're going to pretty much change the whole topography of the structure of the land. And I don't think this land, there's a reason why it was never built. And it's because it's full of rock. It's all glacier stone and glacier rocks that came in. And to me, it's chaotic if they're going to do this. And I'm really concerned about the effect of what's going to happen to our home, because with Stetson Place, we have a crack in our foundation. We have a crack in our garage floor. Our roof settled. We had to get that fixed. We're on a well because we're set back from Padenham Road. Our well collapsed. We had to get that, whatever they did when they came in, they had to re-drill it. I think this is just above and beyond. You're talking about putting 10 homes where there should be 4 or 5. I would really hope that you guys could consider the environmental impact on this and what it's going to do to everybody around us. Basically, that's it. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. To the Kennedy family, I didn't explain it to Mr. Gucker because he's familiar with the process, but when we're done with all of the opposition speaking, we're going to go back to Attorney Marcus and Mr. Dodo if they have anything that they want to address on your concerns or any statements on your concerns. So there'll be another round to go from the applicant standpoint. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? So I saw the microphone go off on Sachi. Does that mean that you'd like to speak?
No.
Okay, put your mic back on. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? So now I'm going to call Attorney Marcus, and if you want, you can also yield to Mr. Dodo if you want to address any of those issues or your closing remarks as well. And then we're going to ask the commissioners if they have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, Neil Marcus. It's interesting, Ken's opposition, Ken Gucker's opposition, talks about traffic being a major concern. But quite honestly, if the property is developed as single family 1 acre, for all the reasons that Ben Dodo identified in our zoning regs, we need to put in 4 driveways. And to do that, we lose some of the opportunity of fixing the problems that exist on the road. And it's just, I know it's a tough site, but it's a site that exists and it's allowed to be developed in accordance with either the current zoning reg or the RA20 zoning reg. It's not a question of, well, if you don't change it to RA20, nothing's going to happen with the site. I mean, in reality, Ben's original map showed a conventional 1 acre layout. And again, going to Mr. Kennedy's concern about blasting, I'm not surprised if there will be blasting on the site. I can see it. And again, I'm assuming, as everybody else is, that the ledge is not rippable by a machine. It's got to be blasted. We won't know that until somebody actually tries to work on site development. However, assuming that it has to be blasted, to suggest that you'll do more blasting to do a cluster in an RA20 is just nonsensical, quite honestly, because the purpose of the RA20 cluster is to just do that, to limit the amount of blasting or site work that you have to do by moving the houses closer together, and in particular, getting rid of 3 driveways. I mean, to look at the site and say, how much work is it to bring in, 4 long driveways off the road? Those 4 long driveways require a lot of work, which may be blasting, as opposed to 1 long driveway about equal length of the other 3 that you'll eliminate. You're going to do a lot less work there, a lot less road work. So, the commission really should not make it focus its decision on blasting. The commission should focus its decision on the issues that were raised in the staff report and whether or not this is more in line with the current plan of conservation development, or whether their own sense is that it's better development to allow clustering, reduce curb cuts on a road that all of us agree has issues. By going to 1 driveway, we can address those issues. But I'm going to defer for a second to Ben Dodo on the issue of blasting and site work on a 1 acre versus a ½ acre development. Can you comment on that, Ben?
Mr. Dodo, please.
Sure. as we know, this property is not flat. And there's going to be excavation required no matter what you do, whether you do a 9-unit cluster, a 4-unit, when I say unit, 4-lot subdivision, or 22 unit condo complex, which could have been done under the RMF 10. There is topography here. It has to be managed. And the rock excavation, it consists of a lot of things. And it consists of drilling, blasting, removal, and finishing grades. The concept plan is flat because it's just a concept plan. I didn't do a detailed design for purposes of a concept to show you guys what it would look like. However, at the time, if this zone change is approved and we come in for a 9-lot cluster subdivision in front of the Planning Commission, we're going to have to retain the services of a geotechnical engineer. We'll do that actually before we go in. We will do soil borings throughout the property, determine exactly where the rock is, where the soil is, and also have some recommendations. And then if it goes beyond that and gets approved, the fire marshal's office steps in and issues the blasting permits. And things that were done years ago, when a lot of people say they had damage because of, this vibration or that vibration, those things are managed so much better today, to the point where the last project I worked on, the fire marshal asked for every lot within, it was 300 or 500 feet to have pre-blast surveys, have everything documented, sensors at the property line. And that would be done for a 9-lot cluster, a 4-lot subdivision. The only, the good thing about a 9-lot cluster is going to be one developer going in there doing all the work at one time and managing the sight lines. With a 4-lot subdivision, you have the potential of 4 different lots selling at 4 different times over a span of years. And every developer doing what he wants, every builder or homeowner doing what they want with the property. But there will be rock excavation no matter what happens here. The important thing is the removal of the driveways. I'm not going to comment on traffic in the neighborhood or anything like that, because 9 single-family houses compared to the potential for pre-existing retail is a significant reduction. But again, having one driveway, fixing the sight lines, and as I had mentioned, even though we may not be widening the road, the state could ask for that. You never know if they ask for that on the curve, they could. But basically, by taking the shoulder and flattening the shoulder out and removing some of the topography and vegetation, that's just going to make it better for everyone driving up and down the road. When you have trouble seeing what's coming around you when you're heading north, going, looking to the right, and the opposite coming south. So let's see. So yes, and as far as the final design will not be flat. It'll have topography, it'll have contours. It'll have some grade. There is a grade change throughout the site that'll have to be managed. And there will be some blasting again, no matter what happens on this property, no matter what the zone is.
Thank you. Commission members, any questions? And I'll see if Attorney Marcus wanted to finish up on that, but Commissioner Malillo, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Haddad. Actually, something that Mr. Dodo mentioned just had me thinking for a second, because I was obvious, some of the options, especially the 9 cluster development option, would require some planning commission involvement. I would imagine it would be a planning commission public hearing, which would have another opportunity for some of the neighbors to see a more detailed plan for development and be able to voice their opinions. But I also have to figure there's some options in here that would not have, that would be administrative only. So I was wondering if Mr. Dodo or Mr. Marcus could just potentially address that, just make us aware. The cluster development obviously, would go before the planning commission, but not all of them would. If he could just clarify how that would work from a procedural standpoint.
Thank you,
And
Commissioner Malillo.
allowing the neighbors then also to have a future say with a more detailed plan.
Thank you. Attorney Marcus, you want to grab that?
Yeah, that's a good point, because Ben started down that road in his comments, Bendoto, and Bob Lillo is just taking it full circle. The control over the development of this property is obviously in the hands of the planning commission if it's a cluster subdivision. If it's not a cluster subdivision, quite honestly, the planning commission doesn't ever look at this site. Because what we have here are some old titles. We have parcels that have existed and have never been cut. The magic year is 1958. If you have a lot in Danbury that exists before planning, then you're entitled to do a first cut. So what we have here is a consolidation of a number of, we have different tax lots, but in reality, we have different title lots. So what will happen here is this property will, again, the lots that result have to be 1 acre and meet the dimensional requirements with certain frontage, certain width and everything else. But it doesn't have to get approved as a subdivision because those can be created by cutting this property because historically, these are old sites that have remained in single titles for many, many, many years. So basically, the answer is if you want to, if the neighbors want to be assured a voice in the development of this, then they really should be saying, change the zone and send those people in to the planning commission. Because absent that, if you leave it in RA 40, quite honestly, this property can be cut somewhat haphazardly and really under the buttermilk case, you really can't say you can't use Pembroke Road because this property has always been zoned as residential, single family, single acre on that road. And to the extent that's been there, the courts have said the obligation to make that road safe for that use lies in the city of Danbury or here, the state of Connecticut. So to say that, well, we're concerned about how this project develops, the only way you can really have oversight, quite honestly, is to force the property owner to go to the planning commission. Because otherwise, right now, the fact that these properties are being consolidated doesn't change their historic titles. So I've seen the titles on this thing, on these, and they're old. I mean, these properties, the Morrissey family has owned, it's been passed down to the Morrissey family for 2 or 3 generations now. And the properties have existed. We took title to 2 of them, 2 of the properties separately. And the Morrissey property, where we have a contract to purchase, is itself separate titles. So it really, I don't want to sound an alarm here, but I want to be realistic. And to the extent that we are proposing something that we really legitimately feel addresses the concerns that were raised by the neighbors originally, we still feel that way. And the fact of the matter is, as Ben has said, there's grade, and we're going to have to deal with grade. But we have to deal more with grade if we do the cluster than we have to worry about it if we do first cuts. So just practically speaking, it just makes a lot more sense. And hopefully it answers your question, Bob, because in reality, this is a unique piece of property. The titles here are old, and that I don't find this very often. But that's the case right here. So hopefully that will answer the question.
Yeah, thanks,
Commissioner
Attorney
Mallow,
Mark.
you good?
Yeah, well, because I was thinking, because we can all of us on zoning who've been around for years, and even council members, we hear regularly something happened that they didn't know. There was no opportunity to voice, no opportunity to say, and we said, well, I'm sorry, they're allowed to do that. That's the way administratively things work. There are certain things that are administrative. There are certain things that go before public comment. And so I just wanted to rationalize in my mind, because this is, as Attorney Marcus noted, a unique parcel where, let's face it, Pembroke Road is Pembroke Road. We've all driven it. We all, if we've gone to Jeffries once, how hard it is to get out of there. So So there are negatives there, and so just the best way of recognizing that property owners have the right to do something, and residents also want to protect their investments. That I just wanted to address and see how that would play. And so it sounds to me, and so it sounds, Attorney Marcus, that if with a zone change, there is more opportunity down the road, while not a guarantee, because you could probably still do some plans under the RA20 zone, which wouldn't go before the Planning Commission. Realistically, most of them would go for another public hearing. Am I fair in saying that?
Absolutely. And by the way, you can't do that first cut plan very well under RA20 because you still only end up with 4 or 5 lots, period. I mean, because you can only cut once as of right. You can't take a property and cut it 3 times into 3. You can't cut the pie into different slices. So no, there's clearly an opportunity here to have administrative oversight in the land use process by getting this into the RA20 zone. It doesn't quite exist as readily in the RA40. And that's just an historic aberration. And by the way, there was nothing Machiavellian about that. I kind of discovered that as I did the title search on this stuff. I said, oh my God, these properties have been in these families for years. The parcel which is to the north with the trying to think, the one that it was the Kennel property. The Kennel property itself was an old title in one family for many years, and it was handed down in an estate to the lady from whom we bought it. And she unfortunately is not a young lady. Actually, I should say maybe fortunately she's not a young lady. She's lived a long life, but she's had it for a long time.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Dodo a question. I know that I, along with the other commission members, know the property well. I like a nickel for every time I've driven on that road, thousands and thousands of times. So I know the property very, very well, but I don't know it exactly to the point of the question I'm going to ask you. But Mr. Dodo, it appears to me that if something is done tonight or whenever to approve this, or if nothing is done, in my mind, from what I recall of that, the same amount of blasting is going to take, pretty close to the same amount of blasting is going to take place to develop that property under RA40 as under RA20. It's the location of the units and the number of units that change, but to bring that curb down under RA40 and RA20 is the same amount of blasting, and to bring that ledge down where the kennels are is going to be the, I mean, how close am I to that as a guess?
About bringing the ledge down or the amount of blasting?
The amount of blasting and ledge to come down under either zone seems pretty similar to me.
It's probably a little more if you do 9 lots than you do 4, only because they're closer together, they have to be flatter. But there's going to be significant for both.
Significant for both.
Yes. And, on the flip side, just, but that's all we're here for tonight. I'm just looking at only because everyone's talking about the other uses here in the regulations. But the cluster development, as would a subdivision, the cluster development would come in front of the Planning Commission. And I think that's where and again, I haven't designed it yet, Chairman. I've done just what can you do? And as I mentioned earlier, I looked at what you could do under R40. I didn't like it. And there were a couple I didn't even bother looking at because the minute you start looking at it, you don't want to waste any time because it's just not going to work and you put an X on that idea. So it really came down to these two once the other application was withdrawn. And the cluster just, it answers all the questions. Obviously, the opposition here, they're not happy about the rock removal, but rock removal is going to happen no matter what happens on this property. And the degree will depend on the ultimate design.
If the petition gets denied, there would be no more input from any of the neighbors. If it gets approved, there'll be other ways for the neighbors to get involved in this project as it goes forward.
Yes,
So,
because
So other boards and commission.
Yeah. Cluster development's a special exception use, yes.
Commission members, thank you, by the way, Mr. Dodo.
a
Attorney
problem.
Marcus, where your box changed. Attorney Marcus, did you have anything else before I call on the commissioners to question you?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Commission members, any other questions of, and I'm going to go to Ms. Calitro finally also. Are there any questions, commission members, further for Attorney Marcus or Mr. Dodo? Commission members. For the Kennedy family, I see you have your hand up, but the procedure here is the petitioner goes first in favor, opposition, and then they give rebuttal. So there's no more opportunity for the any more speaking from any side other than the petitioner at this point. Ms. Calitro, did you have any comments?
No, I don't have anything further. Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
and I noticed commission members, you might want to take a look at the last paragraph on page 3 of the staff report. If the commission decides that they want to look at this proposed zone change favorably. Okay, I guess that's it. So at this point, I'd look for a motion to continue the public hearing, to close the public hearing. So is there anyone looking to make a motion this time? Commission members.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Commission members, Commissioner Fay made a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Malillo. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye to close the public hearing.
Aye.
All those opposed to close the public hearing. There's no opposition. I didn't hear and I didn't see. So this public hearing is closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Under other matters, I'm going to talk about other matters after I talk about for reference only. Under for reference, oh, nope, I'm sorry. Let's finish here. There are no continuation of any public hearings. There's no old business for discussion, possible action. There's no new business, and there's no correspondence. For reference only, the regular meeting of the Zoning Commission on March 14, 2023 will be in person in the City Council chambers at 7:30 p.m. Agenda to be posted will include the notice of an executive session to discuss pending litigation, docket number DBD CV 2260-41619S3 Lake Ave 9S, and then 3 Lake Avenue Extension LLC versus City of Danbury Zoning Commission. And I'm going to tie that in with the other matters. So I wanted to address the new commissioners, and then I'm going to reach out to the alternates as well. For anyone that was not here for 3 Lake Avenue, the videos and the documents, everything is available for review, still posted. Now the procedure on that executive session is we're going to go into executive session, and we're going to have Corporation Counsel is going to address the commission and present a proposed settlement document for our study and for our review and for our discussion and for our vote. Now, we're going to discuss it, and what we're going to discuss is whether or not to instruct Corporation Counsel that they should continue in court, or on that executive session, our commission could vote to have a public hearing on the proposed settlement. Our executive session is not going to decide on the settlement. That's not what we're going to do. So we're going to hear the settlement. We're going to discuss it and decide if we should tell Corporation Counsel to continue on with the lawsuit in court, or we believe we should have a public hearing on the proposed settlement, at which point in time it'll be properly posted and we'll hear the petitioner, we'll hear discussion on the settlement, and we'll hear those in favor and those opposed. And someone may have some question on that this evening. I'm sure the commission members all understand it. I think everyone's been through executive session before. Is that correct, Ms. Calitro? Did I throw that out there correctly, the way you see it?
Yes, you are correct.
Thank you. Commission members, any questions or any other matters? Any other matters? Any other matters? Any other matters? If anybody wants to make a motion to adjourn, I'm sure everybody will jump on board with that at 9:03.
So
So
moved.
motion to adjourn, motion made by Commissioner Johnny to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Fay. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you very much. At 9:03, we are adjourned, and the next meeting is scheduled for March 14, 2023. Thank you, everyone.